Hi there, I'm Katy-Rose, and I make videos about living with purpose, motivation, and some other stuff. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about living intentionally, or intentional living. And the reason that I'm talking about this is because I think there's a lot of different ways of interpreting what this can mean. So I'm going to talk today a little bit about what it means to me and some of the kind of myths and things that perhaps people might understand to be intentional living, as well as a couple of the first sort of steps. So if actually you think that this is something that calls for you, then how to get started. So the first thing with intentional living is a bit of a definition. So what is intentional living? Well, intentional means done on purpose, and living is obviously the way that we live our life, the kind of verb. It's about living with purpose, with a sense of purpose, and also kind of conscious choice. So if someone has intentionally chosen to be vegetarian, they often will make very conscious decisions and choices about what they're going to eat or the ethics behind what clothing they might buy. So as I am someone who is particularly interested and curious about purpose, what I call our inner fire, and how that can motivate and energize us, I am aware that we can control more than we realize, at least a lot of us a lot of the time, myself included. I forget quite often. So having the idea that we can live on purpose, we can make conscious choices, we can have more control over ourselves, over our lives, over what we do and how we feel, that's pretty empowering for me. And therefore intentional living is something I've really been looking into lately. The general trend that people seem to understand with intentional living is that of simplifying. So a lot of the videos about intentional living talk about minimalism and kind of living with less, or living with specifically things that are more aligned with our values or core beliefs. I am not a minimalist. I think it's quite apparent. However, I do tend to be fairly intentional in the way that I spend my time on a good day, the way that I spend my mental energy, and the goals and plans that I have in place for the future. I tend to be quite intentional with my actions, mostly based on my values. One of the things that I think is the first step with any kind of intentional living or living life on purpose is to have some understanding of what that purpose is, what your intention is, what values guide you. Those three things are all the same in my opinion, just worded a little differently. My values, when I've done the kind of personality tests and kind of looked at lists of core values, particularly when I was doing my coaching training, they gave us a list of values and told us to cut it down to 10 and then 5 and then 3. The ones that I ended up coming up with were things like loyalty. So loyalty, truth, trust, justice, they all came under one umbrella. I am someone who values honour above all else, so I will do what I say. So I stick to my word. I don't make promises I can't keep. I tend to hold other people to their word as much as I can. I try to do that consciously and let them know that I'm doing that, because I think a lot of people say things kind of off the cuff, whereas I tend to be a bit more, I guess, intentional or conscious with what I say I'm going to do and making sure that I do it and I follow through with what I said I'll do and following through with that word. A second value that I think I particularly hold is about capability, about strength, about having more control over ourselves than we often focus on. So I felt incredibly out of control in my childhood. I didn't feel that I could control my emotions, my anxiety, the things that happened around me, how I was feeling, who I was. I had a massive identity crisis at the age of sort of 10 or 11. I think I stopped believing that I had a personality. So for me, that sense of identity, capability, resilience, strength, well-being, all of that is wrapped up in sense of control over what I can do and what I can influence. One of the reasons I guess I started this channel, and one of the reasons I started Map Your Potential, to look at resilience, well-being, and actually habits and kind of making life choices that work for our true purpose, our inner fire, our sense of meant to be more. You know, we're not meant to just go through life, eat, drink, sleep. Like, there's got to be more that we are here to do. Yeah, so that's my value around sort of capability, what our purpose, I suppose, that kind of inner strength. And then finally, when I was forced to pick a third value, I really struggled to pick one out of all of them, because I think, you know, we all of us, you know, value different things. So I value my family, I value relationships, I value time, I value being healthy. There are lots of things that you could say I value, but going a bit deeper, I think if I look back at all the things that I've done, one of my guiding values is that of curiosity. So I want to know myself. I want to understand, why do we do what we do? Why are humans as they are? Why do animals do what they do? Why is the world as we think it is? And that has led me to, at university I studied psychology, quantum physics and neuroscience. I then went on and did mental health qualifications in cognitive therapy. I've done life coaching. I've looked at Reiki. So I've kind of tried to explore all the different ways that we can build on our capability and our strength and our resilience, but in any possible way. So I think I was 17 when I wrote an essay about how energy healing is actually quantum mechanics and quantum physics can explain Reiki. And it's just one of those things that, for me, it's that curiosity and that understanding, that self-knowledge, which for me, the message that I keep getting is it's that mix between science and what we know to be true, and that kind of intuition that we need to follow, that we can't explain yet, but it doesn't mean it's not real. Much like magnetism was magic for 100 years or whatever. The first step, if you are thinking about living an intentional life, is to work out what your intentions are. So my intentions follow my values. I spend my free time reading books. I spend my free time writing. I tend to attempt to eat healthily at different meals, because I know that my body and my strength and my capability comes from having a physically well body. I guess technically I have done so many courses. I've just finished a course on storytelling online. It's only a year or two ago that I finished my cognitive behavioral therapy qualification. I tend to want to learn things. All the books I read are about quantum physics, they're about neuroscience, they're about the Japanese or Norwegian ways of living a happy life. It's all curiosity about how the world works for me that drives me forward. So one of the best ways for you to do this is to think about what has guided you. So when I look back at like my education or my jobs that I've gone for, or things that I'm most proud of, it is that I've written books, it's that I've done a master's in neuroscience. It's, you know, when I look at that and I go, why did I do that? I couldn't tell you an acceptable, culturally acceptable reason, because I don't want to go into neuroscience, I don't want to work in brain injury, I don't want to work with Alzheimer's, I don't want to work in research in that specific field. I have a lot of interests and I want to encompass all of them. So when people ask, why am I doing this? I just had to go, because it interests me. And I didn't really think more of that. Whereas now I know that what I was seeking was, how do habits work? How can we be our best self? How can I follow this purpose? How can we know ourselves? What is there that we're missing? What's that missing link between this sense that I have inside of, I am meant to be here to do more. I am here to teach. I am here to share something, and there's got to be more to life, as J.C. Rico would say. So that really is the first step, is to think about what choices have you made? What conscious choices have you made in your life? When I was at college, I was told that I could do either English or psychology, and I would do well in either. And I remember flipping a coin, because I liked both. equally. And looking back, that was the right thing for me, but actually how we use our language is a massive part of my interest, and how we talk, again, that sort of, like I said, with the loyalty, it's like keeping of your word. And when people use certain terminology and certain wordings, is there a deeper meaning? And again, it's that self-knowledge, that curiosity. So all the way through my life, I can find these values. Now, I haven't done this overnight. I have been looking at my values seriously since 2010. So this is something that over time I've slowly come to know. That's why I do this. This is why I do that. This is what guides me. And now I'm able to go, well, do you know what? I'm curious and I want to value strength and capability. I'm not someone who wants the latest fashion. You know, I'm not here to be a wonderful guru for clothing, or I am not here to find a cure for cancer. I don't think there's anything wrong with either of those things, but it's not what my pull is about. So that first step for intentional living, for living with purpose, is to identify that purpose. And I think that first step has to be focusing around, well, what guides you, what values, what are you aligned with, whatever wording you want to use. What is it that guides you? A vegetarian knows that what guides them is that they don't eat meat, and that changes their choices. Or they may not eat gelatin, which is in sort of jelly sweets and things. So there are certain things that, because of their choice, because of their intention, they then have a set of rules which simplifies what they can and can't do. And they choose to do that in line with their values. I choose not to buy expensive new clothes when the trends change, because it's not a value of mine. I do choose to buy a lot of non-fiction books and spend my time reading academic papers, because I like that stuff, even though it's a little bit strange. Being able to know what is the current science showing us about our world, how is the world, how does the world work, how do we work? And that's what I'm here to do. So just wanted to talk a little bit about that idea that everyone's a minimalist, everyone is intentional living, knows exactly what they're doing. We don't, but it is one of those things I think we can all do. We can all explore, you know, am I living my life on purpose? Is this what I'm here to do? Is this what I want to do? If I look back over the last week, have I spent my time in a way that makes me feel fulfilled and like I'm on the right path, as it were? I mean, there's no right path. All of us are tweaking this as we go along, you know, but that was just something I wanted to talk about. So if you have any particular thoughts about what your values might be, or how you might be able to find your sort of theme, as it were, do leave a comment down below. And if you enjoyed this video, you may also like my video on 4 steps to find motivation, which goes into a little bit more detail, and perhaps when you're trying to find, why am I making changes? Why am I making these different habits? It is a little bit more around those conscious choices. So there'll be a link to that in the description, and I'll probably pop a card up here as well. So do click that if you think it would be interesting, and I will see you again in another video.